Good evening and welcome to the Sound Off Show. My name is Linda Kirker. I host the program and I thank you so much for tuning in tonight. I'm going to start the program tonight before I introduce my guest in a few minutes. You may have seen in the paper in July, actually July 26th, Messenger, that Representative Welch proposed narrowing the border zone, which would reduce the area in which the Department of Homeland Security can stop vehicles from 100 down to 25 miles. So in other words, previously, Department of Homeland Security had a 100-mile area that they could stop people coming across the border if they suspected that there might be a problem. Now it's only 25 miles, which I think is a crying shame given the fact that we have so many problems with immigration these days. You may have heard on today's news that the young lady who was missing for approximately a month, she had gone out jogging and she was found today, and they found the person who took her life, and he's an illegal immigrant. So we have to make sure that we toughen up our stance on immigration, and along with that, there are many, many visas that are overstayed, all different kinds of visas, and we need to get a handle on that and make sure that we enforce our laws. We allow people to get away with these things because we don't enforce our laws. And there's something very wrong with that because we deserve to be protected by our own country. So also, I would note that Senator Leahy also has introduced a companion bill on this same piece of legislation within the Senate. So one more thing, I found this on my computer today. It's a recent posting from Guy Page, and here's the heading. Vermont is #1 in illegal northern border crossings, according to a U.S. attorney. Her name is Christina Nolan. Illegal crossings are up 50% in the last year for the U.S. Border Patrol Swanton sector, which covers all of the Vermont border and parts of New York and New Hampshire. This has got our attention, U.S. Attorney Nolan said. It's a priority for our office. So I'm very happy to know that it's a priority for them. And also, in the article, it is not known to what degree or even if Vermont's sanctuary image has affected the increase. However, some key Vermont local, state, and federal officials in the last year have not been eager to cooperate with federal border security efforts. Not good, folks. It scares me. It really scares me. We elect, we elect these people to represent we the people in Washington, D.C., and they have an obligation to do what is right for the people, not for themselves, but for the people, to make sure that this country is safe for Americans to live in. So I'll end on that note, and at least for the moment, you can expect more. If you know me, you know that. And now I would like to happily introduce my guest, Mary Beerworth.
Thank you for having me on.
Oh, thanks for coming back, Mary. I always appreciate having you on the program. And Mary is the Executive Director of Vermont Right to Life and is a resident of Fairfax.
That's right.
So thank you for coming on the show.
I always love to come on your show, Linda.
Well, it's fun for me, too.
And it's a nice opportunity for me to spread some information about what's going on in the pro-life movement in Vermont, particularly.
Good.
Yeah.
good. That's important. What's more important than life?
Well, it's the founding principle of our country, and I think our founding fathers in their wisdom knew that when they wrote the Declaration of Independence, they chose the right to life as the first right, I mean, without which no other rights are possible. So that is why we have worked now since 1971, this organization goes back, had its roots in the early 70s, to uphold the sanctity of human life, every human life, from the moment of conception through birth and through natural death.
I'm there. I'm with you, Mary.
I'm glad.
Yeah, well, we have a right to life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness, not a guarantee of happiness.
Right.
But it's up to us to pursue it, according to what we do with our lives. But first, you have to have the life.
Right. And it's safe for everyone if we respect human life. And if our legislators and those making our laws understood that bottom line principle, I think things would look very different, both in the State House and in Congress.
Well, yeah, I mean, just what I was just saying here is another aspect of protecting life. And our law enforcement officials at all levels need to work together.
Yes, they do.
To protect life.
But those tiny unborn babies are entirely left out of that guaranteed protection for life. And there's going to be a lot of controversy in the months coming up as Kavanaugh goes through his hearings to sit on the Supreme Court. And Roe v. Wade will be the big central topic of discussion. So I'd like to take a minute to explain what that means for Vermont.
Sure, do that.
It's a lot of hand-wringing and, oh my dear, we throw out Roe v. Wade, women's lives will be in danger, and our economy will turn upside down. I can't believe some of these feminists say that we have to have abortion for the economic life of our country. That's a direct quote. But for Vermont, just as the Voice of the Unborn, which later became the Vermont Right to Life Committee, started in the early 70s, so did the push to legalize abortion. So in 1971, the case went to the Supreme Court of Vermont, and Patrick Leahy was state's attorney at the time, and he was supposed to defend the pro-life laws. Well, you can find on his website where he clearly admits that he decided not to fight the case and produced, I don't think, an iota of material in defense of the pro-life law. So that was overturned. So Vermont's pro-life language was overturned a full year before Roe versus Wade was passed at the national level.
So Vermont did not protect life.
Did not protect life, and so it's also important to unpack that suitcase, because should Roe v. Wade be overturned, then we go back to the Beecham v. Leahy decision, which legalized abortion in Vermont. So it will stay entirely legal here, which means that abortion is legal without any restriction, without any requirements, without even the most bare minimum of an inspection, state-sponsored inspection of a clinic. Abortion can be performed right up till birth, and that is the way it will be after Roe v. Wade is overturned.
In Vermont?
In Vermont.
So why is it that Vermonters have elected for over 40 years, 43 years or so, a Senator, Leahy, who didn't protect life when he had the opportunity to do that?
And I encourage people to go to his website, and it's Beecham v. Leahy, and he has an explanation there of why. I'd rather they heard his own words. But technically, he did not put up a defense of the law, which was his job as a state's attorney. So anyhow, but more importantly, it's just important to understand that there's going to be a lot of hand-wringing and hysteria. But Roe v. Wade was a very wrongly decided court case. It was 7-2. The judges had personal interest in wanting to make law from the bench, and they created a right to an abortion, which ironically they found in the 14th Amendment, in the shadows of the penumbra of the right to privacy. So penumbra is a shadow. So in the shadows of the shadows, they found somehow a right to privacy so broad that a woman could get an abortion at any time throughout pregnancy.
Wow.
They set aside all 75 testimonials from the scientific community, from the medical community, about the beauty of life, the scientific proof of life from the moment of conception, and essentially they ruled that a woman's right to an abortion superseded any possible right to life of that unborn child. So there are experts who favor abortion rights, who do believe that Roe v. Wade needs to be thrown out because it set a bad precedent for future court cases. It was politically motivated and wrongly decided.
Wow.
So, but if Roe v. Wade is overturned, it simply goes back to the states to decide. State legislatures will then make decisions about what they want for abortion policy. Will they be notifying a parent of a minor? Will they require that alternatives are offered to women? Will they set a limit not past 20 weeks when science has proven that an unborn child feels that pain of that excruciating abortion? They already have their pain symptoms in place, and in fact, they may feel more pain because they're so young and those nerve endings are so raw.
How many weeks is it before the heart beats?
No, well, the baby can't grow without a beating heart. So there's a rudimentary heart in place right away. But you can, so between 18 and 24 days, the heart is beating regularly. The thing is, you really can't hear it for a few more weeks with the instruments. But right away, in that rapid subdivision of cells, the blood needs to be pumping for all that to happen. So there's a rudimentary system already in place within days.
You know, I would like to, I mean, I know, I'm certain that there are circumstances that are very difficult for some women, females, if you will, where they're torn. But if they have the right people in their life, like I had Deb Kuchar on the show.
Yes, she's
from
wonderful.
Aspire Together.
Yes.
What a great service they provide.
It is, if anyone knows that they're there. But there are pregnancy centers that will support a young woman through the pregnancy and all the way through. And we have 11 centers now. So, and another one's developing up in the Northeast Kingdom. And they're sticking right with them through parenting, through all the needs till they're on their feet. And it's a wonderful service. Always the National Right to Life Committee, which we are the state affiliate of, and Vermont Right to Life, have always made an exception to save the life of the mother. And thankfully, the doctor has 2 patients, and rarely does a woman have to sacrifice her life. The baby can always be delivered early and take its chances in the nursery. And they're saving babies as little as small as a Coke can and as young as 22, 23
You're kidding.
weeks. Oh, yeah. Yep.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. It is wow.
That's amazing.
So one little baby's aborted in one room in some of these clinics, and we're in the hospitals, and in another room, they're saving that baby's life. So your worth is now depends on your circumstances.
What can we do to get Aspire Together and Vermont Right to Life into the schools to talk to the students about life?
Well, I used to be invited. I'm not the only one, but I often myself would do debates in schools. I debated at UVM with the head of the debate club. We were invited. These issues were fleshed out. But the number one provider and promoter of abortion in the state of Vermont is Planned Parenthood. They have 6 abortion clinics out of their 12 satellite offices. They have a large downtown Burlington abortion clinic on St. Paul Street, and they have several others that will do abortions in their clinics. But they have 12 altogether, that's almost every county. So they they just stopped debating. So we just weren't invited. They wanted both sides. So
today in college, they don't get both sides.
or anywhere. So it's very, very rare. We often are invited to some church groups and certainly this forum. We try to get our word out any way we can, but the school kids, I would like to be able to speak to school kids.
Well, you know what? I'm going to start asking questions.
Sure.
I have a call. I called the Department of Education recently about another issue, about whether our students in Vermont are being taught about Sharia law and Islam. And I got an answer, and I'm going to follow up on it.
And that's what parents need to do too. Certainly if your child has taken the debate up in school, I know of some young girls who've taken the pro-life position and made sure that I got them all the materials they need. But if parents want to make sure their kids are hearing two sides of the story, they need to ask to have a speaker come in and insist that someone comes in on the other side and we'll both be there for the day. So that's one thing parents can do. And they're going to need to be looking at your packets. We were talking earlier. Parents' rights are under threat in the legislature. There seems to be a profound move to get parents sort of out of the picture, especially when it comes to issues of sexuality. And our kids need parents more than ever on issues of sexuality.
Amen.
There will be, for high school students, junior high and high school students, new sex education materials coming to your home, so look at them carefully.
Not from you.
Not from us, nothing from us, but it will be very much geared to what Planned Parenthood would be wanting kids to know about. They'll be told about abortion. They'll be told where to get condoms in the school. So there's going to be a new push here, which... Anyway, it's up to parents who are listening. That's their job. But do make sure you read your packets. They're coming home now.
I have a hard time dealing with that. I think that as adults, as parents, as grandparents, even as educators, it's important, and churches, important for those of us who understand these topics to talk with young people about, my thing is, of course, when I was young, most of us didn't get involved in sexual activity, okay? We were busy with sports and plays and band and all other kinds of activities. And even though you might have a relationship, a boyfriend that you like, it would be a rare thing. And today it's so different. But the young people are exposed to sexual things all over the place.
That's really true, and it's an over-sexualized culture. I lay a lot of that at the door of Planned Parenthood because their attitude towards sexuality is so extremely casual. And they promote all kinds of different sex acts, and they make it seem like it's normal, when it isn't normal for our very young girls to be sexually active. It's hurtful for them, it's dangerous for them, it's abusive in some cases, and often parents have no idea why their children are acting differently and getting more emotionally problematic for them. There's probably nothing more devastating than a young sexual relationship that ends. The broken hearts take girls and boys off track. Sometimes it leads to altercations. It's just, and then never mind the risk of STDs and all the diseases. So I went to speak to the Director of Health and Human Services under Jim Douglas one time, and I said, look, what's going on out there is they're asking the mothers to leave the room so they can have a private chat with their very young daughters.
Who's pregnant?
Just at their physicals. The mother leaves the room or the father leaves the room, and they say, are you sexually active? And whether her answer is yes or no, they offer her the birth control pill. And the doctors do. And then they tell them that when they want more, they can go to Planned Parenthood. Now, here's a child, whether she has said she's sexually active or not, is being unduly influenced because of this attitude. So I went to see him because I said, doesn't it seem like we should be saying to the young girls who say, no, I'm not sexually active, congratulations, you're doing the best thing for your health. And your health is my concern as your physician. And the longer you can delay sexual activity, the better for you. And I didn't get a really response out of him, but I wanted him to know that's what is happening today.
Well, that's why parents, my parents never talked to me about sex. And I think I don't know what the rationale was, but it didn't.
Let's face it, it's difficult to broach the subject with the child because if you have an innocent child, you don't want to start them thinking down a track.
Exactly.
And so, but then again, if you haven't caught it in time, they're exposed to a very sexualized culture, which leaves girls vulnerable to boys who have been around, and vice versa. I want to be sure to say that. But so anyway, parents beware. It's so much of your child's life will depend on good choices, and I think we need to be talking about those good choices, regardless of what is taught to them in school. There better be some backup at home.
Yes, and one of the things that I wrote in a letter to the students following my opportunity to speak with them, I included that, a quality life is about working hard, making good choices, things of that nature.
Yeah.
And it's so true. The choices we make can lead us toward a path of great joy and, enthusiasm for life, or they can drag you down.
Yes, and so anyway, I do want to get back a little bit to Roe v. Wade so that people are clear. The Vermont has an excellent chance of becoming the late-term abortion fallback state in the country. It's so super protected. So I would like anyone listening to understand that our aim and our goal cannot really be legislative protection for it. We can keep trying, and we're going to keep going in, and we're going to keep offering reasonable common sense. So right now, a parent of a minor who has gotten herself pregnant is on track to get an abortion, and their parents will never know. The secret may come out later, but she may be making decisions that benefit her boyfriend's parents, school friends who don't, everybody has a stake in her making this all go away. But that doesn't mean it's going to be good 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road.
For her.
And when we see families that get together, get informed, and make a decision together, sometimes there's an older sister who couldn't have children. There's some solutions out there that, and including adoption. So that's a piece we've promoted. You were in the State House when we passed it in the House, but the Senate refused to take it up. So it's very difficult to get anything through. We'll keep trying that. But it is getting the numbers down to zero that is our number one goal. By staying active in our communities, and we have chapters all over the state. They're all volunteers. They're at just about every single fair. County fair, there's a pro-life booth. And they promote life because the goal is that every time they see those beautiful babies in the womb, and we have beautiful fetal models, they're the models that they use in teaching hospitals. They show the development from 1 month all the way through to 7 months.
That brochure that you put out?
Yes.
Oh, wow, that was so educational.
That was a beautiful brochure, and we will be doing more of that. And when we can reach directly to people with the truth about the science, it's science we're talking about. The medical community and the science community, not disagreement here. This is a human life. There's no other place to put the moment of the human life begins than at the moment of conception. It's simple science. So we keep promoting. We have dropped those numbers in the state of Vermont, but unfortunately we've had some very bad news over the last 5 months. And that is that the UVM Medical Center Board of Trustees has decided to now engage in abortions. Under their family planning section of the hospital, and they have hired 3 abortionists who are capable and trained to do D&E abortions. That is a late-term abortion that is a dilation and evacuation procedure, and essentially it's a dismemberment abortion.
Taking the baby apart.
Arm, leg, and then somebody has to put all those pieces back together to make sure they got it all. So it's gruesome and it's grim, and it's going to mean that our numbers are going to go back up. And the news gets even worse because they did this deliberately with intent to train doctors and nurses at the UVM hospital to do abortions, and then they want to expand this practice to every hospital.
Oh my gosh.
So we are going to be looking at more abortions. We had reversed the numbers since the 1980s. We were up to about 3,500 abortions a year. We had that number down to 1,200 a year.
My gosh.
Women choosing different options, understanding more. But now I'm afraid the numbers are going to go back up.
Vermont has a very low birth rate anyway. We need thriving young babies and young people in our state.
Well, some states recognize that, Linda. They have policies. They create policies that welcome young families into their states. North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee. A lot of our people are going there. They have good jobs. They have low housing. They have good. Your family can afford to live there and have some money to spend, and they're not getting that feeling that you get in Vermont that children are just not welcome here. And that is the attitude.
Well, I've said this before when you've been on this program, but I'd like to repeat it, and because I never forgot it. The testimony at the Health and Welfare Committee in the legislature, which I sat on, the women who came in who had abortions years before, and all through their lives following that abortion, they have suffered. They have wondered, what would my little girl or my little boy have looked like? What would they have done with their lives? What kind of a relationship would we have had? And they're in pain.
And it doesn't end. I mean, they can know they can ask for forgiveness from their maker, and they know they are, but you still can't help but hit that birth date, that due date every year, Christmas every year, Mother's Day every year, and you just can't help but think about it. One of the saddest ones of those stories was the woman who was told, look, have the abortion and you'll have a child when you're ready later. But the abortion led to so many female problems that she was never able. So she said, I killed the only baby I was ever going to have.
Oh, it's sad.
So that's a pain. It's painful.
Yes, it is. It's so sad and as you say, painful.
And so if they're going to just be told in school that if you get pregnant, here are your options, flat out, no discussion.
No emotion, no reality.
And it looks like, okay, the only really reasonable answer is abortion. And it's hard to stack it up differently. You need a lot of testimonial. You need a lot of understanding before you can realize that that is not your best choice.
Not the best answer.
No, it isn't. So sad. I mean, this is all negative. And then another thing they'll do often is say that, in fact, at the one of the abortionists, who's a woman at the UVM Medical Center now, said on a tape, it's a common experience for women. And it is not a common experience for women. So there's this many number of abortions, but many women have had many abortions. Most women have had more than one who have had an abortion.
Really?
Oh, yes. And I knew a woman who had had 9 abortions.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
Yeah, she was just using it as birth control. So it's not that 1,200 women a year have had abortions in Vermont. It's a lot of women having abortions, and of course college students.
We have a lot of educating to do.
Oh, it's just enormous, and then it's easy to slip away because it's not a subject we discuss around the dinner table. I mean, it's a painful subject.
Well, this is where the parent-child relationship comes in, and sadly, there are too many families today where they're not a healthy family unit. It's not a stable type of family, whether there be neglect or...
The family needs more support. And in this state, sometimes I feel there's a little hostility toward families. They have to work so hard in order to parents, in order to pay our high property taxes and all the things that go into it, that there isn't always time for that family meal. And so no wonder so many families have moved out of state where they can make it happen. Yeah.
I know a lot of older people who have been supporting this state financially for many, many years during all their working years, and now they're retired and they're looking at, wait a minute, what are the benefits here?
And once they get to a fixed income, it really becomes tough. So it's a tough state. So we try to breathe some life and breath into promoting life at every stage. A newborn with disabilities is at risk for being left to die. I mean, and our elderly certainly are at risk now that we have passed into law the first state legislature to have a physician-assisted suicide law. And sadly, those stories are being glamorized. I was at an event where they were celebrating 5 years of legalized assisted suicide, talking in great awe about this $3,000 drug you can get, and then telling stories as if it's the right way to die. And I just fear for our young people seeing the contradiction in our state, saying, we have too high a suicide rate. We want it. Suicide prevention is so important. We can't let young people kill themselves. And then over here, we're glamorizing stories of swallowing a lethal dose.
Does Vermont have a high suicide rate or not?
Oh, extremely high, and it's been going up since we passed the law. Yes.
Really?
Well, it sends a really strong message. It's so untested and so frightening to me because suicide can run in families. I mean, that's a Chinese sort of proverb that 7 generations will remember a suicide in the family, and there can be a tendency for more suicides. So just because it's legal for this lethal dose to be swallowed doesn't make it something that won't have repercussions for young children watching this happen.
It's all about a respect for life, and I understand that when you're not well or when you get older and you have things to deal with that are challenging, it can be demoralizing. It can be.
Oh, listen, we have got to support our elderly. We cannot let them feel so abandoned by the aging process that they think the answer is to swallow a lethal dose.
You know, Mary, one of the things that I appreciate is my friends. And there's a group of us who meet once a week at a local entity, and we have coffee and conversation, and we play trivia, and we laugh and we sing. And
that's great.
We haven't been thrown out yet. And I think people get a kick out of it. We have people coming into the establishment and, you know, to buy lunch or their coffee or whatever, and they stop and they stand over by us, and it's almost like they want to join us.
Sure, because they hear happy. Yes.
Well, yes, you need socialization.
And we need so fundamentally to keep our families strong, and we need to be prepared. We need to be prepared for an unplanned pregnancy. We need to be thinking that's not the worst thing in the world. And then we need to be prepared to help our elderly and not just abandon them to some warehouse place, you know, where they feel completely
forgotten and unappreciated and just undervalued.
Absolutely. So these are the kind of conversations that kind of encapsulate our whole message. It's a positive message. It's a message that every life is important. It's a message I would love to share with every teen because they need to know that their life was uniquely important because they have never been before, will never be again. And so that's not a message they're hearing. Their self-esteem is not getting that message that they are a joy and a wonder. So that's what I like to bring into a classroom, and I would love to do more of it because I think teens respond to that.
We'll have to look into how we can accomplish that, because I would like to think that the educators and the other people who work in the schools would like to help young girls from having to go through a pregnancy and decision making and so forth. So I just had a thought.
Okay.
Leave it to me. Several years ago, a group that I helped to form, a women's organization, had a tea for mothers and daughters and certain age of girls and their moms. And it was a Constitution tea. But why couldn't we have another kind of tea? I haven't thought of the name yet, but for mothers and daughters, maybe even grandmothers, about life.
Sure, I would love that. And we can work it into a Constitution tea because our Constitution guarantees the right to life.
Absolutely.
Right? So it's all part and parcel of the same package, but we bring a little bit of well, they need to know that life is under attack. It's under threat. that your child would maybe come to you normally, but under these conditions, there's so much secrecy that is allowed. I mean, 38 states require parents to be notified, but Vermont is not one of them.
If you have, excuse me for interrupting, if you have a minor who becomes pregnant and the state will help her to get an abortion
And pay for it.
and the state pays for it, oh my gosh. And without the parents' knowledge.
The parents who are responsible for her well-being, her physical health, her mental, emotional state, all those things. Yeah. In fact, on the tape, the UVM Medical Center talked about a 15-year-old who had come to them for an abortion, and they billed the state so that the parents wouldn't find out. It's shocking, but that's what it is. We pay for 1/3 of all the abortions. So if Roe v. Wade falls, we're going to have legalized abortion here in Vermont. It's going to be super protected by a legislature that is in the tank for Planned Parenthood and abortion rights. As you saw when you were there, we celebrated abortion on the anniversary of Roe v. Wade. But it's really important for people to understand that it could get worse here. So they could mandate that we pay for all abortions out of the state coffers.
I didn't realize
We
that.
pay for 1/3 now.
Now, do insurances pay for
Yep.
abortions?
And the state will pay partly under the Dr. Dinosaur program. You can call
For
your
children.
You can call your unborn child a family member so that you can increase the financial guidelines, meaning that you can be making substantially more money and yet get the funds from the state to kill that unborn baby. So they could make it. They could pass a law that we pay for every abortion with state coffers, and then they could also mandate and force. Right now, the doctors and nurses at the medical center can opt out. I think there's a lot of pressure for them to engage in the abortion programs.
I was wondering.
But they can opt out. But that could change. There could be a mandate.
That would be troubling as a former RN working at that hospital. I would have a problem with that if I were still working there. And I think probably there are a number of nurses who wouldn't like to participate.
Yes, but the pressure becomes very intense. So there were several surgeons and some nurses who were very upset. They were not told about this move to throw the doors open and participate in elective abortions. And so they went to the board to complain. And basically, they're being ignored. So for those who are interested in this whole thing about the medical community, and believe me, it's coming to a hospital near you, you can sign the petition at our website. You can find us at www.vrlc.net, and that can be shown at any time during the program. Or you can call our office, and there it is. It's on the screen now. vrlc.net. And sign your name. You can leave comments for the board of directors about how you feel. We went to the June 15th board meeting. Was it June?
Of the hospital?
Of the UVM Board of Trustees. I think it might have been sooner than that. But anyway, it was the last meeting they had. And we had made a scroll of all the names that had come in so far, and we had a 50-foot scroll of 1,500 names already. So we'll be going back. We've been collecting those ever since. We'll be going back to their next meeting in September with, I hope, another 1,500 names. And many of the comments were from people who said they will not be going there. It's the same surgical theater where they will take the life of an unborn baby and then do your knee replacement. And some of the surgeons that were upset, and some of the nurses just don't feel that they're welcome. There was a big change at the board. So this happened last September, but a new member was the former CEO of Planned Parenthood of Northern New England. Yes.
Isn't that interesting, huh?
Yes. She actually she worked at several Planned Parenthoods, one in Portland, Oregon. Then she worked for their international office. Her name is Allie Stickney. She is now the chair of the Board of Trustees. And several of the other members are well-known abortion activists. So it doesn't take long for august body to suddenly change into something that we have never seen before. This reverses a 45-year tradition of not doing elective abortions at the hospital because of the roots at the Catholic hospitals, the Mary Fletcher and the Fanny Allen. There were agreements that there would be no elective abortions done, but they're so far away from that now that they quietly took a vote and changed it.
I am guessing that physicians and nurses are not allowed to opt out of participating. What do you think?
But they are now, but it's one of the things we are hearing is that they will be, I think they're going to just be careful about who they hire in the future. So you can opt out now, still with a lot of pressure to participate, but from fellow nurses and doctors.
But going forward, they will...
Would have to, it could change. Yes, it could.
They could possibly hire just people who are willing to participate.
They'd have to do that carefully, but they could do that, yes. They could say, these are the services we offer. And if you say, well, in the hiring process, and if you say, I won't be doing abortions, what happens then? I don't know. So, big changes for Vermont. That changes a lot of things on a lot of levels for the Vermont Right to Life Committee in our effort to try to get the word out. Planned Parenthood has been on the negative side of a lot of scandals lately. So moving into the medical community kind of legitimizes abortion.
I still am stunned that the medical center, I told you that I wrote a letter to, I think it's the chief operating officer.
Yes, Dr. Brumstead.
No, it wasn't to him.
Oh,
it's
Eileen Whalen.
Yes, Eileen Whalen. And I just said in my letter that I was a former registered nurse working at the hospital, proudly working at the hospital, and I always pictured the hospital as being a place for healing and life-saving, and it's very disturbing now to know that the hospital is now taking lives and dismembering babies.
It is, and you are not alone. And there are people who are pro-choice who just feel that same way. Planned Parenthood was a separate clinic. It just didn't feel so mixed with babies who are being born in the hospital and then their lives being taken. So it is disturbing on a fundamental level, and we're seeing tremendous response. The petitions have just been pouring
People
in.
are not happy that
People
this
are
is
not
happening.
happy. No.
Well, that's a good sign.
Yes, and if anyone's going to the Champlain Valley Fair in the next few weeks, there'll be petitions at the pro-life booth there.
Okay.
Right now they're up at the Caledonian Fair.
And those petitions are going to the board at the hospital.
Yes.
Letting them know how many people are unhappy
Would you like me to read the language of the
Sure,
petition?
go
Okay,
ahead.
because I read this to them. I spoke, and as they were unfurling the scroll to show how many people, and we had a nurse there who had broken her leg, and she was due at the hospital to be at the medical center for a surgery the next morning. And when she heard this, she went to Rutland, and she came to tell them so. Here's the language. I oppose the decision of the University of Vermont Medical Center Board of Trustees to redefine family planning services to include elective abortions. I am shocked that the same community hospital that so many rely on for life-saving treatment will now engage in the deliberate destruction of innocent unborn human beings. The goodwill generated by the University of Vermont's Children's Hospital in saving the lives of some of the smallest among us cannot overcome the horror experienced by knowledge of the barbaric means now being employed to end the lives of other preborn babies, even in the latest stages of pregnancy. I ask the UVM Medical Center Board of Trustees to reverse their decision on abortion policy and to rebuild community trust in the hospital's statement of values to respect the dignity of all individuals.
Oh, well, that's really well said.
Well, that's what we felt was true.
Well, I believe it is true, and I'm glad that people are standing up.
People are very angry about this one.
You know, enough is enough, and there are enough things going on in this state. Unfortunately, I mean, I came here as a UVM student in the nursing program many moons ago.
Yeah.
And I have loved living here through many years, raising my family here and so forth, working here. But there's a limit to what is okay. And this is not okay.
It isn't. I appreciate that you get it, and I just want to assure people that you can think, oh, it's just at the UVM Medical Center, but it's coming to a hospital near you if they can make it happen. So,
Wow.
so now's the time to stand up and push back, so it doesn't look like such an easy thing to
move
put into
forward.
a small hospital. And again, to be aware. Be aware of who's on your school board. Be aware of who's on your hospital board, because we didn't see this coming. With just a couple of new members, all of a sudden they brought their political ideology into the hospital.
Yeah, and they kept it quiet, didn't they?
They tried to keep it quiet, and thankfully it was leaked to the press, and there was a front page news. But that front page of the Burlington Free Press was how most of the doctors and nurses working at the hospital found out that their hospital was going to make this leap into elective abortions.
It's really sad.
It is.
You know, these poor little babies.
I know. It's a heartbreaker, and their mothers too.
And you know, I mean, I love little children. Well, I love all children, but I can't stay away from them when there's one around me. I have to go over
I
and
know, they're such a delight.
yeah, even in the grocery store.
Yeah.
I talk to them and I'll go like this, you know, and they look like this.
And it's so nice to reassure a young mother that her child is a beauty and a joy.
Yes,
and
a
'cause it's
gift.
a struggle. I mean, some mothers talk about elderly people being left alone. Some mothers need a lot more support than they get as well. So I'm not here to make it look like having a child is so easy.
Oh no,
you know.
especially if feel like you're alone. It takes a lot of courage and commitment to that little child.
And one of the brochures you mentioned that you liked, we really focused on adoption. And we focused on how much different it is now than it was. So any young girl out there facing a crisis pregnancy, just look into your options, because they will make an adoption plan that works for you.
How many adoption agencies are there?
There's just the Lund Family Center is probably it.
The
And then there's
only
a
one?
Bethany Christian Services that's working to get started.
Good.
But still, most of the adoptions are from overseas. And but they will, the laws have changed, and they'll make a plan where you can see your child, get pictures of your child. It's not the cutoff that used to happen in private adoptions in the 60s, even the 60s, probably.
Yeah, I think the idea of having more opportunity for adoption services can help the person who's pregnant, the woman who's pregnant, or the girl, to complete the pregnancy and know that this child will have a home with people who really
And
want.
that she can be involved in that still.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So lots of positive things. When you're pro-life, it's a positive outlook on life, is how I feel. We think every single life is unique, has never been before, will never be again, and is a precious gift. And those little children with Down syndrome, we welcome them. We want to defend their lives. 90% of those who are diagnosed with Down syndrome are aborted.
Is that right?
90%. Yep.
I didn't know that.
It's in Finland. I think it's Finland. They have pretty much gotten it down to zero. They just abort them all. And there's such a joy in a child with Down syndrome again. So that's the message we have. Every life matters. Every life is valuable.
Yes, and when you have an appreciation for life, it's just so much more fun and enjoyable. And how many families can't have a child?
Oh, it's increasing all the time. Infertility rates are very high. So we have dropped the number of abortions in the state, factoring in that infertility rate. So it has been a real drop. It's not just a drop because women are not fertile. Just want to make that clear. So they figure in population rates and ratios and the influx of women coming and going and the age groups and the fertility rates. So it has been a real drop up until this point. But that being said, infertility is on the rise.
Well, a lot of younger people are not getting married until they're in their 30s. Whether that makes a difference at all in the fertility, reality, I don't know. But this is a life-altering discussion and topic. We have to be able to talk with young people. Oh, we have a caller. What do you know? Caller, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Linda. It's Louise. How are you?
I can barely hear you.
It's Louise.
You can barely hear me. I just told Zach we got problems with volume from your show again.
Oh,
My question was for Mary. It used to be the test for Down syndrome only had a 65% accuracy, which means it could, misdiagnose a number of times. My question is, has that improved? I mean, is it still as accurate as that, or has it gone up?
Oh, I think it's quite accurate, and they think they can do the test quite a bit earlier than they used to be able to do it. So they're tracking more and more Down syndrome kids early in pregnancy, and there's quite a lot of pressure to abort. But that being said, we still hear of cases where the genetics lab was 100% wrong. So women who fight back, I just talked to actually a woman who lives in the area, and she pushed her daughter-in-law to just disregard the negative test results, and she pushed forward for a few more weeks, went and had the tests again, and everything was fine.
no kidding.
Yes, this is modern day, modern times. So that's something that people need to know. The doctors are not always right.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks for calling in.
Yep.
So, we've had a little problem with sound. A couple of people who watch the show regularly are having a trouble, but other people are getting it just fine. So I don't know. I don't know what the deal is, but anyway, that's inconsequential at the moment.
Can't do anything about it now.
No, we can't. So we're down to, let's see, about 8 minutes. What other things we've covered? Abortion, we've covered.
Some on assisted suicide.
Yes, assisted suicide. When did that come about? Was that when I was in the legislature?
Well, we fought it from just about 1998 until 2013. So we defeated it. But under Peter Shumlin, the pressure was so intense from the governor's office, and they very narrowly, just by 2 votes in the Senate, were they able to pass that. They passed a stripped-down version of a regular assisted suicide law. So it had 11 pages fewer protections in it than Oregon or Washington. And right away, people were being pressured into taking the drugs. So there is one woman in the Berlin area who was asked every day. She was only in rehab for a broken wrist. And they kept asking her if she would does she know that one of her options is, because it's complicated, but they pulled it through the palliative care law. So if you were depressed or feeling pain in any way, you could be offered assisted suicide. And that's still going on today. There's plenty of pressure. There's a network in place that you can, so someone who doesn't have that sort of family cushion that we talked about and surrounded by
The support system.
Yeah, can easily fall prey to thinking that this is a good idea.
Oh, we have a caller. Welcome to the show, caller.
Now, Linda, we have a candidate there that I said 2 years ago ought to be elected hands down, and I'm going to say it again. There's this lady right here from Fairfax is a marvelous candidate to serve that town in the legislature. She's known throughout the state. She knows what she's talking about. And my gosh, it's the least we can do is have her elected right away.
Well, thanks, Jim. It's nice to have a fan club.
And I heartily agree.
Yeah.
Mary?
I've been a long-time supporter of Mary, and I admire her work, and I admire what she stands for. And
Well-
I would support her right down the line.
Well, guess what, Jim? I just think actually that you and I should be in that state house together. So you go ahead and win, and we'll see what happens.
And likewise, you.
All right.
That's a great.
I wish you the very best, Mary.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks for calling in.
That's a
You're
great
welcome.
idea.
See you, Linda.
Take care, Jim.
Bye.
Bye now. Aw,
He's a good person.
he is, and he also would make an excellent legislator.
Well, he was in.
I know he was.
he'd be great.
And he was he the mayor of
Oh,
St.
Jim
Al?
has such a long resume. I wouldn't even attempt. Just listening to him for 5 minutes is more. I can't comprehend it all. He's done everything.
I know he's a smart man, and we'd be lucky to have him.
We would.
Down in the legislature again. Absolutely.
I always liked working with Jim.
The two of you,
yeah,
a
the Don
dynamic
There we
duo.
go.
dynamic duo at your service.
Last year, I had a lovely young intern that spent the year at the State House. Her name is Celine Morris. She's on her way now to study constitutional law.
Oh, great.
No, and criminal law. And she gave us a couple days a week, and she was wonderful. 18 years old, everything you can imagine.
Really?
Yeah, she's a black belt in Taekwondo. She was an EMT at her young age.
Wow.
Every play, every sport.
Good for her.
Oh, yeah, she was a real...
I'd love to hear that.
Yeah.
Young people need to realize there are so many opportunities for you out there. Your whole life is ahead of you.
Yes.
You know, it's the choices you make,
Right.
how hard you work, like I said before.
She's a very focused, very pro-life girl. Really amazing. We
Work's
were
a good
thrilled to have her.
four-letter word.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you were lucky to have a young lady
Oh,
like
we
that.
were. And I think we might get her sister next year. So we're excited. Young people are stepping up. Those that are pro-life are immovably pro-life. So it's tough.
Do you think that comes from the family?
Absolutely. That's a family that has 13 children. They had 10 of their own, and they adopted 3.
There you go.
There was just always room for more, and what a loving family. And the mother homeschooled them all. They met a child that really needed a home when they were stationed in Hawaii, and eventually they got the other siblings. So they opened their hearts up, and what a beautiful family.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So it's a mixture of everything that the family support, all taking care of each other and grandchildren coming along, and taking care of their siblings and learning good values.
You know, children who are in families like that are blessed.
They are blessed.
And I'll bet you the work ethic and
It
the
is, right,
cooperation and respect, all of the positive things that our young people need to learn. We're down to about a minute and a half or so, Mary. So I want to thank you for all that you do for so many years. Your heart is definitely in that, what you're doing, and preserving life, trying hard to make a difference, and I'm sure you do. And we'd be blessed to have you down in the legislature, and I'll come down and see you and
Oh,
visit.
I'd love that. And thank you for your shows and all that you do, Linda, and thanks for having me today.
Oh, I love it. And folks, I have a lot of guests lined up, coming up. Some are candidates, some are not. But it's going to be a whirlwind of weeks up until the election. So stay tuned. And I'll see you again next week. Mary, God bless,
Thank you.
and keep up
Same
the
to
good
you.
work.
All right.
And I guess that's it for tonight, folks. Have a great week ahead, and I'll see you in a week. Good night.